Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's Family and Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is taking place here in Morpeth, Thursday, the 7th of July, 2022. You have an agenda pack in front of you this morning, and the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillors Thorne, Dodd, Ball and Renner-Thompson, and Audrey Kingham and Graham Writer.
Thank you very much for that. In your agenda pack, pages 1 to 4, you will see the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on Thursday, the 26th of May. I'd like to run through those as a point of accuracy, so I'll just run through them as they're numbered. If you do have any issues around accuracy, if you can let me know. So pages 1, 2, 3, and 4. Not seeing any indications, so as such, I will sign those off as an accurate record. Sorry, Councillor Fellis-Aiken.
Oh, sorry, it was the recommendation was the agreement team that was 60 to continue to cabinet. Do we have any update on that?
I don't know if you had your mic on. I think the question you were asking was that we had a report at the last Scrutiny Committee about the school improvement team, and there was a request from FACS to get a guarantee over the financing of the school improvement team. I'm not sure that that's actually gone through Cabinet yet, because it'll be through the finance and budget setting, but we will actually make a note, and we're not going to lose sight of that. But thank you for raising that. Okay, so I'll sign those off as a record. Item 3, disclosure of members' interests. I say this every time. We all have declared declarations of interest, which are publicly available. If anyone has anything additional, which is on the agenda today, please say so. I'm not seeing any indication, so we'll take your standing declarations of interests as the ones to note for this morning's meeting. Item number 4 on your agenda is the forward plan of key decisions. That is simply to note, pages 5 to 8. There isn't anything which specifically impacts on this scrutiny committee on those forward items. So as such, we move into the substantive part of this morning's meeting, which is item number 5, the Special Education Needs Strategy Progress Report, which is going to be taken by Sam, and that's pages 9 to 16. Sam, over to you.
Thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Sam Barron, the SEND Strategic Lead for Northumberland County Council. I'm also the designated clinical officer for North East and North Cumbria ICB as well, so it's a split post to look at SEND across education, health and social care. I'm afraid the clicker's not... Oh, there we go. I'm going to talk a little bit to start with just about the SEND pilot inspection that we underwent back in March. We were approached by Ofsted to pilot a new inspection framework. This was an opportunity for some external scrutiny and to be able to test understanding of the progress that we'd made since we were last visited by Ofsted and CQC in May in the previous year. We had 5 inspectors and 3 shadow inspectors come to see us. They carried out a range of actions, so they reviewed our strategy, our needs assessment, our action plans, our self-evaluation. They spoke at length to some of our parents and carers, and they visited a range of education, health and social care settings. I think I might have broken it. There we go. There we are. It was just really to share some of the learning from the pilot inspection. They did comment on their passion and commitment within the local area SEND partnership. They felt that as an area we had a strong understanding of the needs of children and young people with SEND across the county. They also described our SEND strategy as being strong, that it was based on a robust needs assessment, and it was ambitious but achievable, and it was a strong example of whole system leadership. They felt that as an area that we know ourselves well, that we know where we're strong and where we need to develop. They did highlight 3 areas which you will see I will come on to talk about in terms of the SEND action plan. They talked about areas of communication and co-production with parents and carers. They talked around that while the majority of children and young people in mainstream schools have very positive experiences, some do not, and our steps around promoting inclusive education settings and pathways into employment at post-16. They did also highlight that early help support in particular was an incredible strength in how it supports parents and carers. So I've been here in the past and we've talked about the SEND strategy, which has got 4 key priorities. The first one is working together, and that is around how we communicate and how we work with children, young people and their families to improve services and support around SEND. One of the things that we're working on at the moment is a standalone local offer website. Every area statutorily has to have a local offer website, but our parents and carers had said that sometimes it wasn't as easy to find information as they had hoped. So we are redesigning a new standalone local offer with the Parent Carer Forum, and that we'll be able to update you on that in the next SEND update. From a co-production point of view, we did ask the Parent Carer Forum to challenge us in terms of how well as a partnership we are working with parents and carers and children and young people. They highlighted that when things went well, that was where they were involved at the beginning, and that there were opportunities to feed back at the end of the process about actions that had been taken. We have got some specific examples around autism and girls in transition, just as 2 named projects that we have recently co-produced. Our second strategic priority is around delivering the right support at the right time. We have the North East and North Cumbria Integrated Care Board have commissioned additional support in 2 areas. So one is around support for children and young people with mental health needs who are open to children's social care. And that is around increasing understanding around mental health. It's around providing an integrated approach, and it's about having a focus on stability and resilience. And Northumbria have been commissioned to deliver a graduated response to meeting sensory processing needs. This was an area that our children and young people had said that they felt that more support should be available within the local area. So we have appointed several posts, and we have just begun to co-produce the new pathway with parents and carers around the support that will deliver. It's likely that it will be a mix of virtual and face-to-face, and it's being modelled on some of the best practice examples from around the country. There we go. David may want to chip in on this one, but I've described the arrangements that we're doing around ordinarily available provision. So this is guidance that sets out to our mainstream schools around what expectations there are around how you should support children and young people with SEND. So it sets out a very clear guide to all of our schools, and that's around promoting consistency so that children can have their needs met effectively in their schools. Interestingly, the DFE Green Paper, the SEND review has come out, and that has indicated that there will be a requirement that every local area should have one. We've also got the Whole Education SEND project, and that is, I think it's 70 schools at the moment, where we have schools working in groups of 3 to self-evaluate their own SEND provision and challenge and support and learn together around how to improve supporting children and young people with SEND in schools. And we have another project around improving quality of education healthcare plans, and we have set up a virtual front door within that team, and also looking at our decision-making processes and have made some changes there. Lastly, it's around our preparation for adulthood. We were due to do a SEND practice week in June. However, having just had the SEND pilot inspection, that's now been pushed back to the first half of the September term. And that will be an opportunity for partners across the system to have a real focus across the week around how well we are supporting our children and young people into adulthood. We have some work around, I think Neil Dorwood has spoken to you in the past about Project Choice and the numbers of children and young people who are going through that project. That's a specialist post-16 college, and we have 10 additional starters for supported internships starting in September. We are currently in the middle of a pilot. We have co-produced Pathways to Employment, which will set out to schools how they can self-evaluate their arrangements and support around helping children grow up and leave school either into the community or into further education opportunities. So there's currently a pilot there with 4 schools. And that is a very brief whistle-stop tour of some of the key points of progress that we've made. I don't know if there are any questions.
Sam, that's really helpful. Any questions from Scrutiny members on that? John.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the EHCPs, obviously we'll look to improve the quality of the EHCPs. There's anecdotal evidence from around the country that there's increased demands for EHCPs. There's also evidence that parents are disputing or challenging the non-award of an EHCP. What's the current picture in Northumberland, please?
So there are some data sets that come out on a quarterly basis. No, it's a yearly basis. And we have just completed an analysis of where Northumberland sits in relation to the national picture. It's fair to say that we are about average in terms of the number of children and young people that we decline for an EHC needs assessment. We are very timely in support of our education healthcare plans. The national compliance, I think, is at 60%, and we're, I think, in the low 90s. So in terms of our performance about the system itself, Northumberland is strong. I think we are always continually wanting to improve the quality of the education healthcare plans, and that's something that we're probably never going to stop focusing on. So that will, but there's also something about how we improve the communication around that process, hence the setting up of the virtual front door, and the decision-making panels, as you've just asked. It is interesting that the SEND Green Paper has made some recommendations about setting a national way that should be done. But at the moment, in terms of how we benchmark ourselves against other areas and the national process, then we are in the average band.
Councillor Watson.
Hi, I'm really interested about the sensory profiling part. I am an occupational therapist, so it's a big area that I'm really passionate about. But I know when I worked in adult social care, we did have an SLA for doing sensory assessments, but unfortunately we didn't have the expertise that we needed because it is a really highly specialised role. And what we found was that we didn't have the right environments to do the full assessments that would have given the full sensory profile and the sensory diet that could make such a difference to the young adults we were working with. So are we confident that the resources are there, and I notice pathway, once recruitment has been completed, that we can get the right people on board?
Yes. I'm a speech and language therapist by trade, so I can't talk in detail about the sensory processing side of things. But yes, we've got a model that is based on best practice. We have recruited staff to be able to start that process who do have the relevant expertise. And I think it's around having a graduated approach. It's about understanding from when you might have some concerns what you could do, and having a strong virtual offer there that you can almost access yourself without having to get on a waiting list and wait. So there's help available even before you get referred, and then it's all the way through, so that and there will be systems and processes to ensure that those who have the greatest need have a face-to-face assessment and a robust programme. And a lot of this is about improving children and young people being able and be ready to learn. So a lot of these will actually be happening in different locations according to the needs of the individual children.
Any other questions? Councillor Felisic and then Councillor Swinburne.
Yes, I was just wondering how you are with place planning. At the moment, we're sort of full to capacity in our specialist unit in the west of Hexham. And I know that arrangements as well within the SEND services are changing as to how many children you can have under one teacher. And we're worried that the numbers are getting quite dangerous. SEND is increasing demand across the county with, at the moment, post-COVID. And the school, the primary school specifically near me, is at sort of peak placing at the moment and being asked for yet more, so 7-8% come September. And the response on that was about planning for places and provisions. How are you dealing with the increased demand?
Before you answer that, can I just come in with an answer? Because on your work schedule, in October, we have a SEND placement strategy report coming to scrutiny. So some of that granular detail will actually come into that. But well done, because you've given us the opportunity to mention that.
Yeah, but it is for September, the places are being expected.
David can pick up on the substantive on that as well.
Yeah, and there has been ongoing work throughout this year to expand specialist provision right across the county. There is, back to, I think, part of Councillor Sanderson's question about demand, that there is an increase in demand which is reflected across the country and is reflected within Northumberland. The growth in EHCPs over the last 4 to 5 years has been about 10% per year. But actually that's also reflected in an even greater demand for specialist placement. The success story actually is that from September 21 to September 22, there's going to be a 19% increase in the number of specialist places. So that's in special schools in particular. But we're also extending our work with some of the independent sector and APs as well, who are appropriately placed to meet learners' needs. Yes, the strategy going forward to the next 5 years worth of strategy is being brought to facts in October, I think. And that will both summarise the work done to date and also the work that is yet to be done in order to meet this increasing need over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Swindon and Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Chair. And my first point is a similar vein to that, because under support training and challenge to schools, it mentions about the triad system. And what I wanted to check was, because along there, it's saying as an additional 21 new schools will start the whole school SEND programme in September. At present, under the current system, do we have enough cover throughout Northumberland to provide that support for SEND? And I know there's a report coming to say how we're going to expand it, but do we have enough coaching and support at the moment to cover all of the areas within Northumberland? That's my first question, if you could answer that, and then just one more thing I want to mention.
Our analysis of need is better than it has ever been before. And with the resources that we've currently got, we are allocating those resources appropriately. I think the vast majority of learners with SEND and their families are really well served in Northumberland, but that's not true in every case.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we don't have any huge gaps, where Sam's wanting to come in there.
It's just to say the whole school SEND is not the only form of support challenge that is being offered to our schools. So we do have the Inclusive Education Services, which run specialist advisory teachers who can go out and advise schools and provide whole school training around individual needs, such as autism, speech and language and communication. We do have Senko networks, and we have lead Senkos who are also doing that. So although I've described the whole school SEND within the project, within the report, there are other work streams in line. There's also a strand within school improvement as well. So there's quite a lot of support going in through different channels and at different levels of the SEND system.
I think it's just quite important to point out that we don't have big black holes across Northumberland where we don't have any support available. I think it's just quite important to point out. But one thing I want to come back to, and thank you for the report, it's just something that you said early on in there. When things went well, it's about being involved from an early stage. Not just for this report, But for everything that we do in the council, this is absolutely key. And it feels that everything we've done right is about early involvement. And everything that seems not to go well has failed with that early involvement. Not just for this work, not just for this committee, but right through everything that this council does. This needs to be replicated. And I'm really pleased that you mentioned that, because I would like that to be lifted out of here and shouted from the rooftops across this council, because when anything goes right, everyone's involved from an early stage. And I would love that to be blasted across this council. So thanks for just saying that phrase, because it was brilliant. Thank you.
Council, you can come back if you want,
Just to say, it's National Co-Production Week, which is all around redesigning and improving services with the people who actually receive them. It's something that we're firmly committed to. So just thought I'd let you know it was National Co-Production Week.
I like meetings when we learn something. National Co-Production Week. Let's get the banners out. I'm going to bring Councillor Dale in, and then I'll bring Councillor Fellis-Aiken in to round up.
Is that compounded? So that is tremendous amount if you're saying it's 10% year growth, and that 10% is compounded year after year. That is an amazing amount of children or needs growth. You know, if you're just saying it's 10%, but actually it's not, it just goes like that. And that's frightening actually, and it would be interesting to learn and understand why that growth is so significant. So maybe it's something, I mean, it's probably nothing you can actually discuss at the moment, but actually the fact that whether people are being picked up earlier, or is a trait of problems or concerns that are growing within society, actually one might say. But I think that might be something that we should be looking at and discussing, because obviously it's very much part of the bigger picture of the hubs we work in and everything. And that was one thing. And the other thing is, just picking up on what you were saying about early catchment, is actually preschool and working within the local environment, whether it's kindergarten or whatever, how close do you work with the, I don't know where they come under, but with the other educational provision providers, preschool, to pick that up, because I think that's, as you're saying, the early years of the partnership, because, you know, the same, we've got to trade with the compound 10%, but, you know, is it because we're picking them up later, or is it, there's a whole combination of, you know, issues that could be discussed there, and learning as well.
I think I'll take the first part of your question, and then David will take the second part of your question. The 10% year on year is a national figure. So we are the same as the national figure. And one of the reasons that the Department for Education has released the Green Paper is because this is not an issue that is unique to Northumberland. It's happening in every local authority around the country. So they have proposed a system of system-wide changes, and they're currently out for consultation. Consultation closes on the 22nd of July. Very broadly, they are about supporting mainstream schools around inclusive provision. They are around ordinarily available provision. They are around supporting health and social care services to work around children. So I think what we're seeing in Northumberland is what is being felt everywhere. And I welcome the Green Paper. It's a really good opportunity for us to be able to look at how we can fix the system in terms of improving. Now, I'm not sure if that's answered your first question.
No, I mean, it's very difficult, because obviously it's sort of like society culture, how people are living now. Yeah. You know, there's got to be reasons behind the actual growth, because it's compounded. So I'm glad there's a Green Paper, and we can discuss that maybe at a later meeting. If
I just come in from an early years perspective, the 0 to 5s, we have 402 at latest count providers, some of which are schools, some of which are childminders, some of which are small PVI, private, voluntary independent sector settings. All of those 402 are well supported by the early years team. And within the early years team, there are 3 inclusion consultants, for want of a better, who have a set of procedures in place so that settings who recognise or where parents recognise that there might be a particular need, they can liaise with the consultant. In many cases, it's a case of a visit to a setting and then some action taken possibly in and around environment or activity that the child is being involved in, and often that can support meeting need. The way in which early years education works is often very supportive of special educational needs in its very nature. Beyond that, there are a number of pathways where the same pathways that there is for school age learners in terms of COSA and EHCP application. There's also a method of financial support, which is early years STAR, so where the consultants support the early years provider with developing the interventions that are above and beyond what they would ordinarily provide. And then that comes to a panel who will literally cost it out. It could be resources, it could be training, it could be extra hours, man and woman power working with the learner. So we are trying to ensure that whatever systems and funding there is for a school-age learner, that is available in the early years. And alongside that, there's also a whole host of health and social care support integrated together from through into, for example, Portage, which is basically an early years service, which is more specialist for some specialist identification. But also there is a statutory 2-year-old health and education check, which we have high percentage success rate with, again, to get into the early identification element. But I think the main thing is getting the 402 providers really up to speed with training and support so that they can make those identifications early. And I'm not sure if this is a positive or not, but possibly nationally some of the growth in EHCP applications might be related to the fact that people are getting better at identifying need. So rather than it sitting as an unidentified need, which possibly it was in the past, not in every case, but I do think that might be a strand to your earlier question as well.
Basically what we're trying to do, which is great, is actually have a seamless transition between, so when you're coming into first reception, that you've actually got a grasp, as the SEND team have got a grasp of all needs anyway, where possible, which is great because that makes a big difference when they enter school as little people. Actually having people who they feel secure with and they understand their needs. That's good, yeah.
I think on that point as well, David can correct me if I've got this wrong. We've got a piece of software called Wizard, which many of our early years providers have signed up to. So it's David's far more of an expert than I am, but it's a tracking tool. It identifies some key I can do things, and then that is passported on through the system, which helps identify as well. But David can perhaps give us a quick potted summary on that because it's a really interesting tool.
You're absolutely right. The Wizard, specifically the Wizard, is the back office database that keeps all the information and actually is predominantly a finance tool. But the development of the Wizard led to support another development, which is the early years passport, which does exactly as Councillor Daly mentioned there, in that it's a series of supportive assessments which are undertaken by the professionals, probably without the learner even knowing that those assessments are taking place, which can highlight what pathway that learner's on, and that is something which would we had a SEND conference the other day, and within the SEND conference we had a little early years section, and one of the comments there was that 90% of the providers are recording the progress of learners in the passport at both our SEND re-inspection and I think in the pilot inspection. the passport was mentioned as an area of good work. It did feel slightly with dread in terms of the amount of work that's been required to put it into place, but I think the CQC inspector said, why don't we have a 0 to 25 passport? So work in progress there.
Thank you, David. I've got Reverend Lennox, and then Mark just wanted to pick up. And Susan, yeah.
Just a point of clarification, Chair. On top of page 3, I note there's 3 specialist practitioners being recruited. One, are these additional or replacements? And one of them is a clinical psychologist. Do we have child psychologists alongside clinical psychologists? Because there are different specialisms in terms of psychologists. And are we bringing a variety of psychologists in?
Yes. There is a clinical psychologist and assistant psychologist, and this has been it has been planned in conjunction with Children's Social Care and the ICB and CNTW to make sure that the type of post is best suited to meet the need in the within children's social care. I'm sure there will be a report coming in the future around that, but I mean, it is important to note that they've been able to support 71 families so far, and I think that this skill mix is the right skill mix, or I'm advised that is the right skill mix.
Yes.
And I didn't answer the additionality. It is additionality. Yeah. So this is over and above existing services.
Yes, just to follow that one through in a sense, one always used to hear about child psychologists in schools work and such like, but I noted with interest that you're recruiting a clinical psychologist, which is a slightly different emphasis in a different direction, really, from what perhaps has happened in times past.
I think we wanted to strengthen the support around mental health, and as such you should have mental health practitioners to be able to support and advise that. And a clinical psychologist is somebody who can provide the clinical oversight around the work. So it was very important that we had a clinical specialist, if you like, to oversee the work. So we do also have a team of educational psychologists who work and support in our schools as well. So, but this is specifically about strengthening identification and integrated working around children who are open to social care.
I would just stress that is a welcome move in the light of present trends and the way things have been happening, particularly since pandemic.
I agree with you on that. Mark, I'll quickly bring you in and then we'll draw this to a close.
Thanks, Chair. It was just from the work done on the exclusions, there's been a lot of talk here about early years, and I just want to bring things in that it's not always early years, but early help, which can happen at any age. And this isn't just at early years, because things can change with individuals, and they can be fine up to a certain age, and there could be a trigger or something happen, and it's not just at that early age, those early years. But we need to be careful when we're mentioning early, that it's not just early years, but early help. That is an indicator. So just to bring that in, thanks.
We've had a good discussion this morning, so I'll bring you back to the recommendations, which is to note the contents of the report, which clearly we've done because we've all read it, and to support the next steps to be taken, which again, Sam's alluded to around how challenge is used to improve and continuously improve performance. So we'll get a further update on this as we go forward. So on that basis, I think there is general consensus that we accept the report, and we've noted it, and we've had a good contribution this morning. So thank you very much, Sam. I know that you need to leave to do the day job, so thank you very much, and please pass on our thanks to you and your team for the work that you've done. So we're now moving on to item number 6, which is the annual report of the Northumberland County Council Fostering Service for 21-22. Liz, you're going to be taking that, and that is pages 17 to 30 in your agenda pack. Liz.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Liz Spurven. I'm the Senior Manager for Residential and Family Placement Service, and I'm as the Chair's just said, presenting the Fostering Service Annual Report 21-22. I know you'll have all read the report, and the reason why the report has to be completed is it's in line with statutory guidance and regulations that gives details of outcomes within that financial year. So I have a very brief presentation, and I've just pulled out some key highlights really to run through. So if this, there. So I've pulled out some key highlights from the 12 months that I covered, which kind of complement the report, I guess, and we'll take any questions at the end about the report specifically. So one of the positive things within residential family placement services is that we generally have a very stable staff team, which provides great consistency to our foster carers and children that are in placement. The team is skilled and experienced and offer a high level of support formally and informally to carers. And obviously with the pandemic, that's had to be adapted as to how we've done that. So that's been really positive in some respects because we can use the hybrid approach to carers now. We've got an extremely skilled cohort of foster carers, and we aim to maximise the strength of our carers, and we support and stretch them when we need to, but making sure that they can meet the needs of the children that need placing. And they're very committed and have worked with us over the last couple of years throughout the pandemic, and continue to do things over and above their roles on occasions. We want to keep children placed within Northumberland, or within fairly close to Northumberland, and having our own good, strong foster carers means that we keep children local, they're close to their families and the communities that they're involved in, which means they can still access the same school or other education provision. They can go to their any clubs that they're involved in, good family contact, and we've got better placement oversight when children are placed with our own approved foster carers. And we know our carers well. We know our cohort of foster carers, so when we get referrals in, we know which carers can meet the needs of specific children. One of the key things that has been, obviously for the last the financial year, the last 12 months, was the impact of the pandemic and the recovery of that, which is obviously ongoing. So increased face-to-face support and training was put back into place sort of November time last year, and we've continued to build on that. But we are still offering some remote support as well, because it meets the needs of different carers at different times. But much better now having face-to-face support. It means carers who've been approved over the last couple of years are actually getting to meet foster carers, and that peer support is really important, as we all know, when you're in a group of community. We've increased our therapeutic support, so we piloted some training, and we've got the Northumberland Emotional Wellbeing team who are working really well with the service, and that's moved on into this year as well, and driving forward the nurturing attachments training to support our children who've suffered a lot of trauma. So making sure our carers are equipped to look after these children, and have got the support in place to do that. We've continued to do lots of recruitment activity, again, virtually and back face-to-face. We use different social media platforms to support this, and we have the involvement of our care leavers, foster carers and children of foster carers with this. So what I have done is I've put a little bit of a montage of some of the shared posts from social media and feedback from some of our children for you to listen to if it works. And it shows some of our foster carers, and it's in their words what fostering is like. And there's one of the children is the child of one of our foster carers, so he talks about what fostering is like for him. It's only 2 minutes. It's about 2 minutes, and it'll hopefully work.
I quite enjoy having a brother, and because I was a single child before fostering, and it's quite nice to it's like having like a friend who's always there.
We currently have a little 7-year-old boy living with us who jokes on every day that he's never ever leaving. He's going to stay until he's an old man. And fostering brings a lot of special moments, and their moments are things that just blow you away.
before I came to Sheila, I wasn't in a good place with my education or my mental health. And I was actually only supposed to be here for a maximum of 18 months, wasn't it? But the surroundings, like, and the environment itself just fit with the needs, like, I had at the time. So we kind of pushed for me to stay. And now I've been here for 4 years.
Yeah, she's just part of the picture as a Bittens now, aren't you?
So I said it was only short, but that we have got lots of other social, other posts on the website, and we've got that. As I say, that's just snippets from what our foster carers have said, but just gives you a feel of some of the feedback, which is obviously really important. And word of mouth and recruitment through using foster carers is obviously the one of the best forms of doing it. You know, if we're talking about growing our own as well. So that was just a little snippet for you. And we had an event which I'm going to go into shortly. And the parents of the boy who spoke first, they always laugh about him talking about being a single one. And they think it's quite funny what he says, and when he talks about being an only child, and the impact of fostering for him is really good. So I hope you like that. So I've pulled up some of the aims and objectives that I've covered in the back of the report. So I've just highlighted some things that are for this year and that we're already on with implementing. So celebrate our foster carers. It's really important that we recognise and acknowledge the support and the fantastic job that our foster carers do. So we held an event, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, which was the first time we've had all our foster carers together. Well, there was about 130, 140 foster carers. First time we've had that many together for a long time, particularly with the pandemic. And it was to thank them for the work they do. We had a nominations process for those carers that had gone above and beyond. Nominations from social workers across the authority, from independent reviewing officers, from education. And that was a really successful event. And I think foster carers really appreciated actually getting together for a formal section of it for about 40 minutes, and then it was just networking and meeting each other. Engagement of children and young people is, again, it's key. So we're working really hard with Voices Making Choices to look at the recruitment and training needs of foster carers and working collaboratively, and we're including our foster carers in that. And I know that Voices Making Choices group are in the progress of doing some really good work. I've seen some snippets of it, which is not ready to go out publicly yet, but it is really good about talking about what it's like in their shoes when they're coming into care and what our foster carers need to be prepared for with that. We've got national and local challenges of recruiting foster carers, so it's really important that we reach out into our communities, but our retention policy is just as important, because we want to maintain our carers who we want to know well, and that continues a priority. It'll be a priority every year, so every year I'll say that to you about recruitment and retention and how we do that. So we are looking at the fees structure for foster carers, and we'll be looking at some proposals around that and taking that forward. We want to increase placement choice for our children. Children who come into care have often got complex needs. That's why we need a good skill base of foster carers, but we need foster carers who can take children in emergency, who can look after sibling groups. It's important that if possible, we can keep siblings together. And for foster carers who will look after children long term. So that's when into adulthood and then beyond that for stay and put arrangements. I've already mentioned the Northumberland Emotional Wellbeing Team, and they've just started in June after the half term. Some training that's going to be rolled out to all the foster carers, and it's going out to our staff as well, which is about nurturing attachments and trauma-based approach to caring for our children, and that's really welcomed, and foster carers are really getting engaged in that. So I'm really pleased that that's in place, and we can have consultations with the team as well. Then the Mockingbird Implementation, which I have mentioned in the report, I think on page, which is where we're collaborating with the other 11 local authorities in the North East. And I know I touched on this when I presented a report a couple of months ago. And the Mockingbird is a family model which looks at structured around the support and relationships that an extended family provides. So I have put a slide on which looks, this is from the fostering network, and this shows the hub and spoke approach to it, I guess. So what we've done so far, since we sort of launched this, so we started in January, and we did our stakeholder analysis and implementation timeline. We've done some information sharing events with our foster carers. I have got increased the management capacity so that I've got one of the managers leading on driving this forward, because we've got a clear timeline as to when we have to have this implemented. It supports foster carers and nurtures on relationships, and it's about having a community around the child. So we've appointed the liaison workers, which is a shared role of 2 supervising social workers in the service. We've recently appointed our hub foster carer. We did that with we know our own cohort of foster carers, so the expressions of interest was done internally. We had 4 foster carers expressing interest, and they were all appointable. It was a real lots of discussion about who we felt would be appropriate to be the first hub carer. And we're looking at how we can use the other 3 carers who were appointable to support that role and development. And we've now got the expressions of interest out for the satellite carers to see who wants to be part of our first constellation, which will go live in October 2022, and we're definitely on track for doing that. So the slide gives you an idea of how it works. There's the hub carer in the middle, and they have the carers around the outside, which are the other little houses on there, and it's about how they're the point of contact. They will do days out together, picnics and events in their home. The children will come for this. If they need a sleepover, they'll be the point of contact. So it's all about supporting each other within that constellation. And if the child is struggling, then the hub home carer will go and offer some support. So that all links into our trauma training that we're developing. So it's really exciting that we'll have the first launch date in October, and we will be looking at another constellation next year. We do some of this quite informally with some of our foster carers. So in the north, we've got a group of foster carers who naturally do this because of the geography of where they live, and they manage that. But our first hub carer will be based in the southeast of the authority. So that just gives you a flavour of what it is. So that's me, if that's okay.
Thank you for that, Liz. Right, open to questions from Scrutiny. Well, Councillor Dunbar, Councillor Dale, in that order.
I'm on panel. I think you do a fantastic job. What I was going to raise, because I was just overawed by everything. Oh yes, it was your recruitment. I have shared everything, and I have seen those little videos, and I share them on my Facebook page to everyone who reads it and hopefully beyond. Have you recruited many new foster carers through that campaign?
Well, as you know, it's an ongoing process with our recruitment. We recruited about 20 carers last year. I know we've got some really good interest at the moment, and the allocation of assessments are coming through. I think the pandemic has impacted on some of our recruitment and some of the challenges that it comes with. But some of our own foster carers have stepped up the mark, which is why we've been able to place children with our own cohort. The campaign is a drip effect. Someone don't wake up today and go, I think I'll be a foster carer. They think about it for some time. They make inquiries. They look online, and then hopefully they'll contact us and they come to our information in the evening and then do the skills to foster training and go through the process. So it's ongoing, and I do know that as you've just mentioned, your posts get shared. I do know that happens when my marketing officer puts things out on social media and Facebook, that they do get shared everywhere. I don't do social media, so.
Oh, you do? Sometimes I wish I didn't. No, I think it's really good what you do. Can I just ask one more thing? Your foster care celebration event, is that when the children get the awards? Because it was
No, this was purely for foster carers.
Oh, the foster
so you're
carer.
thinking of the event we do for children in care and that celebration. This was purposely just for foster care. There was some children there, but we did it in school time, so there was lots of children under 4 there. Obviously, we're not in school or nursery. And it was to celebrate foster carers, so it was just, that was why we did it, really.
So will you be having another one for the looked after children?
There's discussions underway around how we can look at reinstating those events that normally take place in October. It was probably a bit too late this year, but we're looking at how we do. We're looking at other events that can be put into place. Yeah.
I think the support you do for the looked after children is marvellous, and I have been to those events, and the joy in those children's faces and even the foster carers, it's just wonderful. So I do hope you get one next year, and can I have an invitation just for a fix? Thank you.
Thank you for that. So Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much for it. It's always great to see good things, and it's a very, very, very valued service. Just 1 or 2 things that I wanted to make a point, only because it's been raised with people by me. But first of all, how many children are actually cared for out of county?
When you say out of county, do you mean? It's quite a broad question, that, because we have...
How many children are with foster carers who don't live in the county?
All right. We've got about a number of children who are in independent foster placements, but they're not necessarily out of county. And we've got about 27 of those, of children placed in foster care arrangements that are not Northumberland foster carers.
Yes, the thing is, I know this is a difficult one to ask, but I know that the financial support that the county give, I do have people who actually foster care kids from outside of the county. And their reason when I spoke to them was that their financial package or financial support was greater from outside other county council services. I don't know what the response to that is, and I don't know how it's regulated or how it's worked out, because that's the perception that I was given.
So independent fostering agencies pay structure, if you wanted to call that, is generally different to a local authority structure. We have had foster carers transferred back to Northumberland or come over to Northumberland, and it's not financially driven, it's around the support and other elements that come into it. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at the fee structure. Foster carers receive a weekly allowance, which is in relation to the child for Northumberland, in Northumberland foster carers, and then they receive a fee element, which is about their skills, and we are looking at reviewing that. Foster care, independent fostering agencies generally pay a 1 fee per week if you have a child in placement. We have other incentives in place. If a foster care doesn't have a child in placement with us, they still receive a weekly fee from us, and there's other elements that come into that. But with me looking at the fee allowances structure, I don't know whether that'll come back here at some point or where that'll go. Really.
We can perhaps pick that up in a...
I think, I just think because it gives us, because you're doing such wonderful work, obviously everything which would be helpful to keep more of our children within the county in foster care would be great. So maybe it's not for discussion now because it's such a broad picture, but I think it would be useful discussion to have.
Chris has made a note of that, so we'll pick that up.
Can I just add another point to that? Is sometimes children need to be placed in an independent agency, so there is the demand in the market as well. So that it's a fine balance as to making sure we're meeting the needs of children and the demand for placements.
I think the dynamics about how difficult it is and how it's not. This report's great, but underneath that you've got a tremendous amount of other work that you have to do, and I think probably that's what we want to have a look at more, maybe.
Thank you for that. Got Councillor Fellis-Aitken.
Yes, I thank you for that wonderfully human report. I hate it when children are reduced to data. That was beautifully brought alive, and I will be sharing. A lot of people I've talked to who want to be foster parents are kind of put off a lot, and I can see that you're obviously trying to deal with that and kind of those issues. So I'm just wondering about timings. How the timing of training people to be foster family, how long does that take? And then the timing of placement for someone who wants to go into, how long does that take from the birth family to the foster if you've got someone waiting?
So the training process, the recruitment process can take 4 to 6 months, and that's purely around, you have lots of checks to do, references, you have to do the skills to foster training, which is a 3-day programme that we deliver, and then there is the full assessment process, and then it comes to the fostering panel, which is what Councillor Dunbar was a member of. So the social workers in the team will work with that. So some of it is led by the applicant, because it's on their availability and how they can and what they can do. And we'll fast track assessments on occasion if it's appropriate to. So ideally within 4 to 6 months to be approved as a foster carer. Once the foster care is approved, they could have a child within the next week, depending on when the agency decision makers comes back. But we would probably be having discussions with them about children that need a placement during the latter stages of their assessment, depending on what age profile they're saying that they could look after, if they're wanting a child placed long term. So it can happen very quickly, or we've got some carers who might say, I'm being approved, actually, I've got to give notice at work before I can't child place for a month. So it's a little bit fluid and individual to each individual carer who comes through the process.
So you don't have much of a backlog then? Are you constantly moving children through the system, or is there a pool of children waiting to be placed? Not really, or?
No, if a child needs to be accommodated, then I work with colleagues in the social career teams to look at placement options and placement choices, and that's where I look at both our in-house placements and independent placements, depending on the demand. If it's a planned move into care, that's much easier than in an emergency. But we do have emergencies where children need to be placed in foster care on the same day as these, But we do try and do planned moves.
Thank you.
So, I'm not seeing anyone else indicating to speak, so I'm sure on behalf of the whole Scrutiny Committee, we always do thank you. But you and your team and those foster carers out there make a huge difference to the lives of young people. And I agree with you, Susan, that moving from data to real people, that's the impact of what happens. So, but just move on to the report. We've definitely noted the contents of the report, and we acknowledge the report and the performance indicators which are in there. Chris has already made a note to get some of that data about out-of-county placements and some of the budgeting differentials on there. So on that basis, I think we're happy to note the report and to thank you and your team as well. So please pass that on. I know that you also need to get off to do the day job. So thank you very much for coming this morning, and we'll hopefully see you soon. So thank you. Right, so as we move on the agenda now, we have item number 7, which is a briefing note on a potential multi-academy trust opportunity. And David Street is going to take us through that. It's pages 31 to 34 in your agenda pack this morning. David.
Morning again, everybody. Happy to bring this report to you. I'm just going to whiz through a few of the highlights, I suppose, to put some meat on the bones that you've got in the report itself. You'll obviously all be aware, March 22 saw the government publish a white paper, which had a number of strands within it, and one of the strands within it was an aim and an objective to ensure that all schools are part of a strong MAT by 2030. So a little bit in the distance yet, but a reiteration, I suppose, of a strategy and an aim there. In order to do that, the paper sets out three methodologies. They want to grow existing MATs. That's been a strategy for a while, and there is a definition now of a strong MAT should look like and the abilities that it should have. And there's definitely a desire and a push within the white paper to do that. The further methodology of that is to particularly focus on education improvement areas. So these are areas of the county and local authorities where performance hasn't been so great from an educational perspective. So it's growing the strong MATs that already exist, in order to get everybody into a strong MAT by 2030. It's particularly supporting education improvement areas with additional support to grow their MAT network. And the third part, which is really the nature of this report, is that it also, we will now be allowed for local authorities to form MATs and to form a trust board which will oversee multi-academy trust setups. Historically, the local authority, Northumberland Council, have attempted to form a trust before and therefore be able to academise schools that wish to do so. But actually, though there's been quite a lot of work in the background there, there wasn't the statute, there wasn't the rules and the regulations to in order a local authority to take that lead role, but that's now changed. The process for us as it stands at the moment, and the ink is quite wet on some of the documentation that we're working on here, but we have, all local authorities have been asked that if we have an expression of interest, to formally record that expression of interest to the DfE by the 31st of July. There are a number of aspects to consider for the application. In the first round, we understand that there will only be a maximum of 10 local authorities chosen to run out the first set of local authority MATs. And I suppose that's probably a sensible point of view in terms of there'll be a lot of learning going on during that particular programme and then to roll out to other local authorities. The process for selecting which local authorities will be given the opportunity to form a trust and therefore isn't massively clear. Having said that, I think probably it will just be common sense to consider that probably local authorities that don't have current strong MATs already in existence or don't have strong MATs that are in a position to expand rapidly, then local authorities in those sorts of areas, I suppose, will be looked on as a good option. And also possibly local authorities where there's a smaller proportion of schools already academised. So from Northumberland's perspective, yes, we've got a reasonably in line with the national average, in fact, in terms of our secondary sector, which have already academised. But as a primary sector, we're probably a bit lower down in the number of schools which, primary schools, which have academised. Having said that, that has grown with the development of the Catholic Trust in recent times. And we do have some strong primary MATs in Northumberland already. So that we could possibly see some development in those areas. The options we've got from a Northumberland perspective is to really consider what we would drive as being, I suppose, our key selling point in any expression of interest. And we have had some initial discussions with our regional DfE colleagues in terms of what they're really looking for. And I suppose some of the options we've got is whether we put forward an expression of interest to look at a geographical area in Northumberland, so one of the partnerships could be an option in terms of the expression of interest. It could be that we look to form a trust which would look after a particular phase of schools, so that it might look at some first schools we've got, or it might look at a group of middle schools, who knows, you know, that those are some of the options. But the other one, and this is one that was the one that probably when we had informal discussions with our DfE colleagues regionally, they went, sort of nodded that might be, is actually possibly to get into the first round, a unique selling point or something that's special for Northumberland in particular is our rural schools. And we would if we extended the analysis of which schools are academised, it is actually our rural, there are much less of our rural schools that are involved in the academy system and in a MAT system, and therefore you can see that might be attractive to the DfE as an area where the model could be rolled out. Certainly looking to take advice from this group is whether there is any opinions on what might be the way forwards in terms of an expression of interest, or I suppose alternatively there could be some members might be keen to say that they're not keen actually on progressing this option, and some local authorities are not putting in an expression of interest. Some are sitting back to see what happens in the first round, and so on and so forth. So that's the territory we're sitting in, and I hope the report reflects that. Certainly open to any questions.
Great. Thank you, David. Mr. Hodgson, I'm happy to bring you in. Unfortunately, you don't have a microphone. So if we can pass one back, we'll happily involve you. So I've got Mr. Hodgson, then I've got Councillor Dale. So
first of all, apologies for lateness anyway. Yeah, David, I was just wondering, have you done any sounding out yourself? And in which case, what's been the feedback and the positivity for the potential for a county mat?
Yes, we have. Audrey wrote to all schools almost immediately after the white paper was put out, actually, to say that we would explore this as an opportunity, and that we were interested in schools that might have an interest. You know, would it be worth exploring it if there were no schools in Northumberland interested in supporting it? And there has been in the tens of, so 40 schools-ish so far have responded to say that they would be interested in having a discussion about it. All we've been able to obviously share with them so far is the possibilities of what might happen, but actually there is an interest. It's quite broad, the interest. Some schools did read the white paper, and I don't know, there is a bit of pressure in there in terms of saying you will all become academies by a certain time. And so we've tried to just calm that particular perspective and say it's by 2030 is the aim, and that there will be options. Though we have some very good and strong working relationships with the multi-academy trusts that are currently in Northumberland, that doesn't necessarily mean that all the individual schools would be keen to join one of them, because there are a whole host of reasons about why they might feel they were a good fit or might not be. And so the white paper does, you know, say grow strong existing mats as its first driver, and that has caused a bit of concern for schools. So they don't want to be forced into something, I think. But Audrey's letter, I think, mentioned the idea that this was an opportunity to grow our families of schools. And actually having families of schools working together has been a thread through Northumberland forever. So it might say something else on the headline, but probably the core principle is about families of schools working together, sharing resources, but also with a degree of autonomy so that each school can maintain its uniqueness, and every school in Northumberland is unique.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dale. If you can just pop your microphone on.
I was sort of probably one of the first councillors involved with setting up multi-academy trusts in Predio, and I actually recall it's not that easy, but actually it was successful in the end. And also the DFE were very clear that you couldn't invite other people from outside of that actual partnership in at the very beginning, which maybe wasn't helpful. I do have this clear vision about a child's education and the footpath going all the way up. And where I feel is that if possible, local schools who are sitting alone can join the nearest academy trust to them where their children feed in. So it's, I mean, you know, I can talk about the academy trust I work with, and we have tremendous, I mean, the arrangements for staff have the educational resources is so broad, and everybody works together. And, you know, there's always problems within individual schools, but I do have concerns about having big rural first school whereby the MAT might be working across first schools without actually working with the future schools, their transition, whether they be primary or first and middle and then high. So, you know, it would be good for us maybe to have a look at the the academy trust, multi-academy trust in each area. Then we've got a bigger idea about where the county council would be looking to provide their own multi-academy trust. Because it's easy to say, we'll have this, we'll have that. Actually, Northumberland is enormous. And the catchment areas are also, you know, you've got problems with catchment areas and everything else. So I think it's a bigger picture here is how we can bring schools together to join academy trusts that maybe haven't had the opportunity, but to talk to academy trusts to say, well, we've got one outstanding school here, you know, can you all work together? Because actually we're not looking at a structure, we're looking at actually children's education, and to ensure that they have, you know, seamless transition all the way through, and they actually work with their own friends, children all the way through, and there's no breakup or anything. So, you know, I feel very strongly about that, and that's why I originally worked with Predo at the beginning, to get things moving and get things through. So I think everybody will have different ideas, but that's something that I feel very strongly about.
I'm not sure that... go on, David.
For this particular opportunity and the expression of interest for the 31st of July, the initial local authority maps will be limited to 10 schools maximum. So, well, obviously that shades what sort of model we can get, but it is absolute common sense and right that if we can get the families of schools working across the partnership with whatever the title of the organisation is for that, that's got to be an aim for everybody, hasn't it?
Thank you. John.
Thank you. Just an observation from the previous two reports that we've had. Both refer to how important it is to have local understanding of local areas. This is a very tentative proposal. I would, well, as a union, we would tentatively support it on that basis, bringing into mind knowing your local area. My only concern would be if you're a local authority school in a MAT and you're just a local authority school, sometimes if it looks like a school, smells like a school, you're a school. I'm wondering what the difference would be. You may not be able to answer that, but I think it's an interesting thought.
I would agree. We certainly don't want to end up with where the local authority is complicit in a two-tier system, you know, where one set of schools is getting because they're in the MAT or whatever, would get a different provision to another. So I think we'd have to make sure that whatever resources there was went into maybe developing and running a MAT, that those exactly the same resources were available to schools outside of the MAT who were, as you say, standalone. And I think that should it take place and move forwards, it might be that there's a MAT group to start with, and then another wave and another wave. So actually, you know, we would try and bring everybody together at the same time, but officially there will be a whole host of legal hoops, which are quite rightly to jump through before we could sort of officially put on. But if we knew other schools were interested, then we could plan for the future and have a time scale and work schemes to do that. And I think probably once it's been done the first time, it might be a little bit easier the second time and a little bit easier the third time. But the equity of provision for schools has to be paramount.
Good. Eagle, Councillor Dunbar, Christine.
Sorry, oh God, there's a bidding process for these MATs. Is this, if the Northumberland County Council went for one of these, is it for the financial benefit for the schools or for the county, or would the local authority, our local authority, go for a MAT for educational improvements in some areas of schools? What would be the criteria that we would go for, if you know about that?
From a financial perspective, there is a section of the form about how it's going to be affordable or not. I think one of the reasons the local authority are well placed in that is that clearly we support the management of over 100 school budgets currently and monitor those. I think the benefits of grouping schools together, and I'm a big fan of federations and worked at one for a good number of years, where though in my personal federation they were individual schools, they were linked by a governing body, and at times there was a financial benefit in that in terms of sharing staff resources, etc., etc. So I think there is some, if well managed, then there could be some benefits to schools in terms of sharing maybe leadership at times or back office staff at times, which actually might make every school's got real challenges with budget. It just, you know, there isn't really enough to go around, but actually it could be a way to develop and support efficiencies. And I think actually the central teams we've got already that work through SLA processes with schools, we've got a good track record in that actually. And I don't see it as being that there probably will be some grants to support the legal work around the transmission, and I think probably schools would be very keen to say that there's nothing about this process that could impact on the day-to-day running of the school and the finances of the day-to-day running of the school. We don't want it to be at the detriment of any learners that are currently there now in making the change. But until we get an expression of interest in and get a response of how they roll out of the first programme, if we're in it or not, it's difficult to see exactly how it will pan out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eagle-eyed readers of this report will notice that under the section called Background, it relates to the Cabinet Member 2017-18, which was me. And this is an understatement, vehemently opposed by the Department of Education, because we had a fantastic plan to create exactly what the Department of Education are now saying we should do, which is to create that family of schools under an academy banner which gives support around learning, finance as well, because at the time the numbers may have changed, but Holy Island School had, I think, 3 students and it went down to 2. Now, they also deserve a world-class education, so why on earth were we not able to offer, through another school in another part of the county, a world-class science lesson or English lesson or history lesson or whatever? It's all about shared resources. So I am delighted in a perverse way that 5 years later on, the DFE have actually thought what I said at the time, which they vehemently opposed at the time, is now a jolly good idea. So, wow, 5 years. So there we go. Sadly, there are no vacancies for education ministers as of this past minute or two. Right, so if we can just summarise, I think the view of the committee is that we should continue the dialogue, but have a very clear cognizance of the locality-based issues, and I was going to say the word autonomy, but the feel and flavour of individual schools and their ethos shouldn't be lost in subsuming them into some great big amorphous organisation. So I think with that kind of preserving what makes a school, be it very small or very big, the school that people want to thrive in, I think we should continue this conversation and get more information from the DFE. And please tell them 5 years on, well done, listening, marvellous. Right, okay, so on that point, we are now moving on to the work programme, which, Chris, you're going to take us through that one.
Thanks, Chair. So the first thing I wanted to mention was that the meeting on the next meeting was meant to be the 1st of September. This has been moved to the 8th of September to allow the committee to receive the outcome of the informal consultation on the COCET partnership. That came to the committee in May to go to before going to Cabinet for informal consultation. So that will come now on the 8th of September. On the work programme, it also mentions the SEND planning report that we talked about earlier. That's been deferred to October. So in September, we will have the outcome of the Croquet Partnership, the Finance and Performance Report, a Children's Social Care Self-Assessment, Complaints Annual Report, and the request from this committee for the support for children and young people with mental health needs in Northumberland. So that will all come in September. I'm hoping members have seen my email as well about the development session that we had planned in July. That will now take place in September as well. With regards to October, there is a couple of changes. We will have the Regional Schools Director coming to discuss some of the policies around academies. We'll also have the outcome of the school transport review, which came to this committee in March. That's where we'll have the Send Place planning report. There'll also be an update on the Pegasus Centre, which came to this committee in March prior to going to Cabinet. And the committee's request for a report on Section 106 funding will also come to this committee in October. And I'll take away the request for the Send Green Paper and the fostering fee structure as well, and I'll try and find some dates for that and come back with that.
Great. So thank you for that. Just one item on the agenda, which is items of urgent business. I just wanted to draw members' attention to something following the Colour report. I took it on myself, having read the Colour report, to zone in on something which was referenced in it. And that was, and I'll quote it here, is the large number of SARS, subject access requests, which were made in this council, and as a result being that SAR requests, for example, on behalf of children, looked after children, had been delayed. So I took it on myself to go to the leader of the council, the monitoring officer, senior people within the council, and the cabinet member to say, as chair of FACS, I want an assurance that this is being put right. So I just wanted to give you a quick verbal update on the situation. So I've had an assurance that measures are being put in place, so I just think it's important that I advise you of this. There is a broad improvement plan which is looking at exploring options to identify arrangements to carry out the serious harm test, which is the potential of risk if SARS are not actioned properly. I have some very clear detail here, which what I think I'll do is I'll share this with all members. So Chris, I think you've been copied into it, but I'm happy for this to be shared to members. But what I would say to you is I am assured, and I wouldn't tell you I was assured if I wasn't assured, that measures are being put in place to deal with some of those backlogs of subject access requests which have impacted on our looked after children in this council, that those are being put right, and that further measures will be put in place to assure us that support for particularly looked after children is being put right. So I will share that with you, and I just want to say to you that, you know, as a verbal report, I am assured that action is being taken. So we will share that with you after this meeting. Councillor Dale, happy to take a question.
Just ask you, how far back does this date to?
In the email which I have, this goes back 2017 to current, and the updated snapshot as of the 28th of June is there are currently 14 open subject access requests. 8 are actively being worked on. That's checks, redactions, finalisation of reports. 4 are awaiting some scanning or additional papers to be put in, and 2 are waiting for additional redactions as well. So that is detailed in the report, but I just thought it was absolutely the right thing to do as chair of a scrutiny committee with a line in a report from Cala about SARS impacting on looked after children, that I took that on board and sought answers and assurance. I have that, I'll share that, and if anyone has any comments or questions on that, happily to come back to myself or to Chris, and we'll pick those up for you. Okay? So, on that point, I'm not seeing any other urgent items of business, so have a wonderful day, and thank you very much for attending. We'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you.